For the MaxRack video, we're going to use the jig to assemble. If you don't have a jig though, you can still assemble in a very proper manner. Take the mounting tracks, place them down on a table, the same distance apart as the roof of the vehicle that you're installing on. Screw them into the table and use that as a jig. So we're going to do Ford Transit. So after you've set up the jig in the proper dimensions, 65 inches is our standard configuration, works for almost all of your installs. You also have the distance between the feet to be set for your vehicle. In this case, we're the Ford Transit. You take your feet and you place them down on top of the stud plates. Lock it in so it won't tip over. Take your crossbar, place it down inside of the feet, and using the handle, you're able to automatically center the crossbar between the feet. Next thing we do is we take channel nuts for each side of the feet and you slide them into the channel. We won't tighten the bolts at this stage, but we will right after we insert the carriage bolt plates. So the next step is installing the carriage bolt plates. 2 plates, 2-hole plate for the tall ladder hook, 5-hole plate that will support the C-bracket and the mechanism. Important point, measure first 1.5 inches from the end of the crossbar. That'll give you the distance when you install the carriage bolt plate. Carriage bolts through the square holes. We slide it in the top of the channel. The longer carriage bolt plate, you also need to support the C-bracket. So a tip is you need to raise the crossbar a little bit to find the channel nut, because otherwise the hole can drop down a little bit. We recommend using hand tools for the installation. We recognize that, of course, some of your employees may use power tools. In that event, we definitely recommend using anti-seize. Will prevent the bolts from galling and prevent you from getting the rack off the van afterwards. The next step is to tighten the C-bracket down to the crossbar, washer, lock nut. Tighten with hand tools as we mentioned. The recommended setting, if you have a gauge, 17 pound-foot. Again, make sure you're 1.5 inches from the end of the crossbar. Next step is to install the mechanism. Drop the main frame onto the 3 carriage bolts. Again, washer, lock nut for each. And try to align the mechanism parallel to the crossbar for best operation. You do the exact same thing with the front mechanism. Washer against the ball stud, washer on the other side, and we've left one hole open where the ball stud goes. So the next step is installing the hex shafts. There are two. The one with the longer extrusion is for the front. The one with the shorter extrusion is for the back. Holes point up, and the linkage will point towards the middle of the van. Insert it into the arm and through the C-bracket. 2-inch bolt, lock washer, washer through the hole. The center tube. The beauty of the jig is you can slide the front mechanism forward. You'll see that then your holes are already lined up for the 65-inch configuration. 2-inch bolt, washer, washer on the bottom, and a lock nut. Same for the front, 2-inch bolt, washer, washer on the bottom, lock nut. Last step, installing the elbow. Linkage goes towards the middle of the van. The R or the L will be on the bottom side of the elbow. The holes are up, and there's a spacer again that prevents the bushing from coming out. And line up the holes. 2-inch bolt. These bolts should be loose. They're shoulder bolts, so you have free rotation of the damper linkage. Any piece that's adjustable, like the ladder hooks, we use a hex nut and a lock washer. For the parts that are permanent, it's a lock nut that holds it in place. You move the carriage bolts fairly close to the C-bracket. You really need the end user's ladder to get the exact positioning, but there's enough space between the short hook and the tall hook for the boxes on the side of the ladder. Washer, lock, washer, X nut, and washer, lock washer, X nut.